They said it was too late, that the best years were behind him. But he wasn't done. He was just getting dangerous. This podcast isn't for the overnight success stories. It's for the ones who are still in the middle of the damn fight. The late bloomers, the blue-collar visionaries, the people who refuse to settle. This isn't a comeback. It's a fucking uprising.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Electrician Entrepreneur. Raw, unfiltered story of my journey out of a 20-year career in the trades into a new life of financial freedom and purpose. Today we're going to get a little bit into discipline, forming of good habits, and working towards removing old ones. Typically, right about now, what I would do is kind of highlight a little bit about what's going to be in this episode, which I think I covered it enough with what I've just said during the intro. But we'd also, at this point, kind of go over the past week, the struggles that I may have gone through, lessons learned, etc. So we'll get right into that. That this past week, some of the motivation for reaching our milestone was doing enough research to begin working on getting the business actually formed, which, it includes filing for an LLC, filing for a tax ID, etc. So we did some research on the LLC. We managed to get through that. What we've determined, and just so that you all understand, before you file for an LLC, do yourself a favor, get a lawyer. It's easier said than done if you have no money, which that's really where we're at. We have no money. So the Small Business Association and maybe your local chapter can provide some help with that. And this is an avenue we've yet to go down. And maybe we'll have something to discuss for next week on that matter. Now, in addition to doing that stuff, one of the big highlights of this past week was me reaching out to my old boss, who I still consider to be a friend. Regardless of the relationship that, as rocky as the relationship was from time to time while I was working with him, he's always been a very generous and kind man and provide help where he can. And so reaching out to him, the goal behind that was to seek out mentorship in some fashion, to, of course, help me to stay honest with myself, and also to give me some insights that I may have otherwise missed in all of my research into various different avenues of business. And so I did meet with him, and it was, he did give me plenty to think about. I also walked away with some new doubts, and no fault of his. It's just, I think that one of the biggest things that you're going to go through, if you have never never taken the steps or never thought about taking the steps until now to go into business for yourself or become an entrepreneur, one of the biggest things you have to get used to is that doubt is going to constantly chase you. And it's easy to say that something failed before you ever tried, but you're lying to yourself if you do that. And so while I walked away with some doubts, I have not changed my stance on moving in the direction I'm moving in. I can't say for certain that my business venture has failed because I still haven't officially tried to do it. So it's really important to understand for anybody that you have to actually do it before you can say it fails. So therefore, that was the big lesson that I really pulled out of this week, is while I was given a lot of things to consider, and that therefore leaves room for doubt to enter, I will not give up on my idea until I've officially made it a real business and it really didn't work. Then I can say it failed. And it can be expected to fail. But if I try hard enough, it shouldn't. And I think, that's also an important thing for everybody to keep in mind. Now, in addition to going to doing those things, I know I've mentioned it before, but if you're new to the podcast, over the course of over the course of this year, I've been dealing with a certain amount of health issues. I think a great deal of it has to do with the split schedule, working second shift for for the company I work for, and then in addition to that, getting up really early in the morning and trying to build an entrepreneurial business. Um, so I think part of it has to do with that, and that's why I'm pushing so hard to get myself out of this job, not just because I don't like working there, but also because health-wise, I think that it's not it really conducive to me long term. So, so that's where the plan, and again, if you're new, the plan is by January 1st to be fully independent. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to hit that mark. I'm definitely going to try, but I will most definitely by the end of the year have left the company that I currently work for, because no matter what, come January 1st, I need to start getting better. And I think the key to that is really going to come from working a normal daytime schedule. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because a lot of the things that I've been dealing with, over this year, one of the things that came up over the last few weeks was some pain that I've been encountering in my left neck. And it's been chronic, and some days it's a little worse than others. And I've been managing it like crazy with ibuprofen, a very high dose ibuprofen regimen, which was managing to do the trick. But then Friday, what I should point out before I talk about the events of Friday, but I did see my doctor this past Monday during our follow up visit from prior tests and so on. When when I talked to him, the plan was, okay, we're going to do physical therapy. Also, I'm going to start seeing a nutritionist to help with my diet. That's sort of unrelated, but kind of fits with what I'm talking about this week in terms of habits. But in addition to that, we were going to have an x-ray done on my neck, and I still hadn't done the x-ray. But we did set up, some physical therapy appointments to begin, in a week, another week and a half from now. And so, I'm making the efforts. For some reason, Friday, when I got to work, I began to feel the same discomfort in my neck, which, as the night progressed, got worse. And I did take some ibuprofen to try to combat that, and it didn't do anything. So as the night progressed, I took some more. As it continued to worsen, I took some more. Didn't make any effect. By the time I left work, I could barely move my head. So you can imagine it was a challenge to drive the 10-minute drive between work and home. And then I made some, ultimately, here's where it ended. About 2:00 in the morning, I get out of work at 11:30. About 2:00 in the morning, I was in so much pain, I couldn't move without feeling like somebody was sawing my head off and jabbing an ice pick right from my shoulder right up through the top of my head. And I don't think I've ever felt pain like that. When I got home, I took a couple of muscle relaxers that I had, did not do a thing. And so eventually I did end up in the hospital. And just like I'm sure many of you are thinking to yourselves now as I describe this, most everybody at the hospital, and paramedics, even when they first encountered me, did not think that how bad could it really be. And, and I promise you, there were a lot of people that were very surprised when they found out just how bad it could be. As I said, I've never felt anything like that. And so I'm going to jump into why this fits with this show, because, almost everything, almost everything that I'm going to go through is going to fit somehow into every topic that we're going to talk about from week to week. And mind you, I should point out, I'm on a pretty healthy regimen right now of muscle relaxers that's why I'm able to sit here and do this recording. I'm taking muscle relaxers as we speak. One of the downsides of that is dry mouth. And I don't, back in the day when I smoked pot a lot, this is about that dry. So at any rate, the reason why I bring this up and how this fits into our topic tonight is that, you have to understand that there are habits that you have, good or bad, or, there are bad habits that you can have that can lead to real physical problems. And in my case, this bad habit is just, my body's telling me one thing, and I'm trying my best to mask that to avoid any real having to really deal with it. It'll just go away. That was the idea. And I'm sure every one of you listening or watching this podcast may feel the same way, that, if you just took some more ibuprofen, you probably would have been fine. No, it wasn't doing anything. I was masking the pain so much for so long that it clearly came to a head. And what I'm doing right now is not helping. But unfortunately, I'm playing the waiting game in order to get into the physical therapy. And I'm also waiting for my primary doctor to get a chance to see the CT scan that was done on my neck. It's easy to have a habit of just masking problems and ignoring problems. And that in and of itself is a bad habit. Just because, I'm not saying that, you get a little cramp, in your leg, that maybe you should go running to the doctor for some x-rays. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is if something lasts longer than a week, then you should probably do something about it. I waited 3 weeks. Technically I waited 2 weeks before mentioning it. But at this point, I could have gone and gotten an x-ray done, which could have probably led my doctor to change the original plan. And I won't know that until he's had a chance to see the CT scan. But I will tell you that what the ER told me in relation to the CT scan is that there is a problem with my neck. And, if I had done something about this sooner, if I didn't wait so long, if I had done the x-ray as soon as it was ordered, whatever, I probably could have avoided what happened to me Friday night. Now, am I better now? No, I still have quite a ways to go before whatever is going on with my neck has been dealt with. And all I'm doing right now is surviving day to day with masking the pain. So that's why I bring this up. And the other thing too is that, I think it's really important. I mean, we are documenting the trials and tribulations that I'm going to endure in my journey towards financial freedom and entrepreneurship. And so I think it's important to point this out. I don't, I can sometimes be a wimp, but you know, I've also developed a habit through my life to try to ignore a lot of things that happen. And I think especially when you're aging, when you're in your 50s, things are going downhill. Certainly they start in your 40s. And so should be ignored less. Um, but regardless, it is very important to take care of our bodies. I did have a very healthy regimen of working out every day up until I started this second shift job. I need to start getting back into better habits that I had. And then one of them is going to the gym. I actually, I can feel the difference between how I feel now and how I felt a year ago. So that there is really what you need to pay attention to. That's where you really need to freaking understand that you can't don't let the bad habit of masking pain get in the way of taking care of your body, and make sure to set up the good habits that allow you to live pain free, or at least minimize the amount of pain that you're going to feel. So with that said, we're gonna switch gears a little bit. So one of the bad habits that I really had, that was really probably one of the worst, um, it is one of the worst habits you can have, is drinking. So when I was working as a foreman electrician, and as it got into the project manager phase of my career, I was a pretty heavy drinker. Not to say that I would drink all day long, but I was one of them functioning alcoholics you hear about. And typically, when you think of alcoholics, you think of somebody who's, really depressed, down, angry, taking, they're lashing out, that proverbial drunk at the bar that's got his head on the bar and, passed out after hours of complaining to whoever will listen about whatever's going on in their life. Yeah, that wasn't me. I was the guy that wanted to be the life of the party. I was always constantly joking and having a great time and all those things. And that's actually worse than being that miserable prick. And the reason why that's worse is because you don't feel like it's a problem. You're having a good time. But the flip side of that, to flip that around, is that you're really not dealing with the things with reality. You're constantly escaping the reality for the sake of feeling good and for the sake of having a good time, and socially being part of the center stage, and that's exactly what I was going through. Was I was always the if not the center of attention, definitely close to it. And I didn't feel like I had to work at it to do that, to feel that way. And in reality, I was missing out on all the things that I should have been struggling with. For example, the financial aspects of my day to day life, married life. Um, I wasn't properly dealing with the stress that came from work, the stress that came with my family. I wasn't dealing with them in a healthy way. If I had dealt with them in a healthy way, I would have found solutions to the things that caused me stress. Instead, my solution was to run away from it, which is very temporary. It's only good for the night while you're drinking. The very next day, you have to go back to reality and deal with that stress again until 3:30, 4 o'clock rolls around, when you can go have another drink. I had a project that I did for this company. It was the last job I did as a foreman, and it was a really large project, and I had a lot of guys, and I felt as though all of the respect that they had for me had slipped from my fingers. My drinking became nightly, whereas before that it was 3 or 4 times a week. This was every night, and eventually, all of the stress at a job that I had not been properly dealing with, and all the stress at home that I'd not been properly dealing with, led to my divorce. I pushed my wife so far away, and I became so angry with her every time that she ever tried to reel me in that she had no choice. For her sake and for my son's sake, she needed closure. It was clear that I wasn't the same person that I was when she married me. And you can't blame her for that. Just before it was actually finalized, I was promoted to project manager, and I'll say again that I'm so grateful for um, my boss's vision, um, and his confidence in me. Definitely something that I really needed. Unfortunately, I still needed to deal with the idea that I wasn't taking good mental care of myself, and I missed a lot of those lessons. So what actually really helped was when I realized that when I hit bottom, actually. So I left that company and went to work for another company. Things weren't any better. Guess what? It's because I still was drinking. Maybe not as much as I was before, but I was still drinking. And I wasn't, I didn't want to deal with the things that were stressing me out. So I drank, and I would just run away from the problems. So the at the end of the day, when I realized that I needed to quit the job, that I needed to start out doing something different, um, a big part of it being that I just didn't have the passion for being an electrician anymore. Um, and the other part being is that physically it's getting harder and harder for me to do the job. Um, After making that decision and then making the decision to start working at becoming financially free and working at becoming an entrepreneur, when I made those conscious decisions is when the drinking became something that I needed to do less and less of. Now, fast forward to today. I'm sorry, fast forward to July. And in July, I pretty much finally hit the point where I had cut down my drinking enough that when I went on this vacation in July and I drank about as much as I usually do on vacation, I realized just how detrimental the drinking was to me, because I had what fresh in my mind, what I was like and what I felt like and how clear my mind was when I wasn't drinking. And I clearly wasn't dealing with things properly when I did drink. So that was that. And I can now honestly say that the only drinking I do is one drink with dinner, maybe once a month at the most. Um, I have no interest in drinking whatsoever anymore. But this allows me, along with all of my other habits that I'm working on building, this allows me the chance to understand just how bad that habit was for me. Now, other habits, I'll list off some other bad habits that I intend to work on. I visited the ER the other night, helped me to see that I can go without cigarettes. So I'm going to quit smoking, and I need to stop making excuses and just do it. Um, it is probably the toughest thing I think, the toughest bad habit I'll ever get rid of. Um, just because it just thinking about it causes stress. So, but the important thing here is that all of these bad habits that we have, they hold us back. They don't do us any good. Drinking was most definitely one of the best things that I ever did, was give that up. Um, you know, and it's, I won't say that I've quit. I'm just managing it. But, you know, not doing it every day, and even having the sense in my head of not wanting to be drunk, is a huge win. But, this is about creating the space for good habits, and in particular, habits that are going to make me healthy, or at least healthier. Um, and that kind of is a good way of segueing into having good habits. Now, one of the things that I had an epiphany about when I started this journey towards financial freedom and entrepreneurship, over a year ago, I asked myself very, very clearly, what are the most successful entrepreneurs doing that is common amongst them all, that has helped them lead to their success? What is common amongst all of them? And there's a lot of habits. If you do the research, you'll find that these, what I talk about now, it's all true, that they all do these things. Um, every one of them, first of all, practices gratitude in one way or another. And what I mean to say by practicing gratitude, and I know for some that this may seem like a frou-frou kind of, yeah, right kind of thing. No, you have to be grateful for every step that you take. You have to be grateful for all the things that you've accomplished. You have to be grateful for all the good things in your life, and all the good relationships as well. And on top of that, you also have to be grateful for all the bad things because of the lessons that they provide. But you have to honestly be grateful for it. You can't just simply say you're grateful for something. You need to be genuinely, you need to change that way of viewing the world, from something that's negative into something that's positive. So when you say that you're grateful for something that's bad because of the lesson you're learning, you need to approach that as in, I'm grateful for the lesson I just learned, not for the bad thing. So, so that's one thing that's very common amongst all entrepreneurs. Another thing that's very common, of course, is financial discipline. And practicing financial discipline. They all have different methods of doing that, but it's guaranteed that every freaking successful entrepreneur out there knows exactly where every dollar goes every day. And and it's an important distinction to make, that this has nothing to do with greed. This is, you need money to live. You need money to pay for your groceries. You need money to pay for your heat and hot water. You need money to pay for the roof over your head. I mean, it's a necessity. But if you're finding that you're constantly struggling with money, you have to ask, where is my money going? I need to know every day, every minute of every day, where my money is going. So financial discipline is, there's a lot of different methods. There's certainly different, there's a method that you can use yourself that probably makes the most sense for you, and will allow you to find your own financial freedom without, you don't have to be jumping out in front of the rest of the world to be an entrepreneur, to find financial freedom. You can find your financial freedom while working the same job that you're working. You just have to know where your money's going and find a method in which you can track your money or budget your money that works for you. Another great habit that every successful entrepreneur has is journaling or some sort of journaling. Maybe it's just writing down various ideas and blah blah blah. Almost all of them, though, keep a pretty thorough journal of their life. Maybe they only journal 10, 15 minutes a day. Some might take over an hour. I think it has to do with the catharticism, if that's even a word, of that they get out of it, because it can be very cathartic to journal, to write about things that are going on in your life. Maybe you're just writing about things you want to happen in your life. Journaling is not, there's no right or wrong way to journal. And people get different things out of it, but they all it's a common thing amongst all of them. So it is, and it is something that I brought into my life. Now, let me tell you, and this is the important part of really where we're going with all this. The journaling has been the catalyst to really all of my mindset. I practice gratitude and I try to journal every day. I don't necessarily journal every day. It is one of the things that when I have a hiccup in my psyche, I may sometimes miss journaling. And I can tell you honestly that it is a big difference from when I journal and don't journal as to how I recover from doubt or recover from anger. Journaling definitely makes those things a lot easier to recover. So I find it to be an incredibly important thing. On top of that, I use an app. I've mentioned it on another episode before, but this app provides me with insights after I'm done journaling that help me to also understand, how to recover from these things that are plaguing me. Now, that being said, journaling, if I didn't journal, I wouldn't be able to see, and this is the important thing. I'm going to really, I'm going to harp on this journaling with you guys for a minute. Journaling, one of the things that you need to understand about journaling or about success rather, is that you need to get your ideas out of your head and into the world. Without doing that, it's hard for you to make what's in your head real. So you have to, that's what journaling provides. You take something out of your head and you put it down on paper. And by doing so, you're taking it out of your head and putting it out into the world so that you can begin to manifest it. And manifesting is another thing that a lot of entrepreneurs do. You'll actually, if you were to look it up, you see that a lot of very successful people manifest, practice the art of manifestation. And but at any rate, journaling is a big part of that. And because you can get you've documented your ideas, right? You get to document your ideas, even if you never look back at it. You documented it, and if you don't write it down, maybe you tell somebody about it. It's still, it just kind of fizzles out and disappears. How many ideas have you had over the past 5 years that you think could have been successful businesses? I mean, can you ask yourself honestly that question? Can you say that it's none? I'm sure some people have absolutely no ambition whatsoever, and probably can say, no, probably not. But if you've ever had an idea and you've just let it fizzle out, think back on that idea. What if you did actually go for it? And what if it did actually work? Where would you be now? What if? Now, I don't want you to go through the rest of your life asking what if. I'm not going to ask what if. That's a dead end. But what I am saying is that the point of journaling is that you take an idea, you document that idea, you put it out into the world. Now it's not just going to fizzle out and disappear. Now you've got something that you can work with. You've made it physical. You made it tangible. You've got it documented. Now take that documented thing and work with it and do something about it. And it's, and you can continue to document as you go along. So today I did this and this and this with this idea, and none of them worked. So now you've got it documented what doesn't work. So now you can always look back and say, when you say to yourself, well, what if we tried this? Oh, wait a minute. I did try that. Doesn't work. So there's a million reasons why journaling is good for you. And it's not just about documenting the things that don't work either. It's all the things that do work, or all the ideas that you may someday be in a position to try, even if you're not in that position right now. Get it on paper or on a computer or out in the world somehow. Do it. Trust me, it changes your life. And then if all it is you're dealing with some freaking mental problem that you're dealing with right now, that's come up recently, and you're just dealing with that, you get it out into the world. And this is the great thing too, is, and you get the negative things out as well, out into the world, and you can put them down. You are taking a giant weight and putting it down, right? It's all those things. So that's the importance of journaling. So I journal. I try to journal every day, and every day that I do, I write these things down. I can remember them easier. I act on them easier, and it's definitely one of the better habits that I picked up. Now I'm going to list some of the habits that I've yet to pick up, that I mean to pick up. Walking. Get outside and walk. It's not something I do currently, but I plan to. If you're not working out regularly, go for a walk. Take a 15-minute walk around the block. Start there. Start easy. Maybe it's a 10-minute walk. That's fine. I walk a lot at work, but that's not the same, is it? You need to walk consistently, and you need to get outside somewhere. I don't care if it's 0 degrees outside and you're walking through the snow. At least you're outside walking. And there's a lot of beneficial reasons for why walking is so good for you. First of all, it helps with your circulatory system. If you don't do some sort of exercise regularly, your circulatory system becomes very unhealthy. I know, in a lot of cases, the lack of movement leads to blood clots, atrophy to some degree, maybe it's minor, but, atrophy is definitely something you'll deal with. And, do a Google search on the benefits of walking. Believe me, you'll be amazed at how much walking can actually help you with whatever you're dealing with. If you're dealing with some sort of physical or even mental issue, walking clears that up. So this is something I'm definitely going to incorporate into my daily routine. I like the idea of working out every day, just because if I don't like breaking up habits, because it's easier for me to build a habit if it's something I do every day. It's easier for me to come up with an excuse not to do something if I don't do it every day. So, but according to most medical science, exercising at least 3 times a week, and that is to say lifting weights or getting on a treadmill or getting a bike or something like that, leads to all kinds of health benefits and mental benefits as well. So that's another one. Lifting weights is something that I want to get back to doing, and walking. Meditation. And for me, meditation will go hand in hand with Tai Chi. I plan on picking up Tai Chi again. It was one of the greatest things I did as a teenager, and I can't recommend it enough for everybody. It's very low impact exercise, but the bigger point of it all is the meditation that you do while you're doing it. So while you're doing the exercise, a lot of that exercise has to do with your breathing while you're doing it and focusing on your breathing. And so breath work, meditation, Tai Chi, it all kind of fits into the same category for me. And the benefits behind any one of those three things, the health benefits, the mental health benefits, I mean, they're astronomical. So, I'll probably do Tai Chi and breathworks as two separate things, but both great habits that we need to incorporate into our lives, if you ask me. And the other thing that I was going to say is time blocks. So there's an interesting Mr. Wonderful. I'm having trouble remembering his name at the moment. He did a recent appearance on the podcast Diary of a CEO, in which he talks about his time with Steve Jobs. And the point of the discussion has to do with signal to noise ratio. And so this is a new habit that I plan on picking up that I'm actually very, very enthused about making part of my daily life. But signal to noise ratio basically refers to, and you can look up this episode, Mr. Wonderful, and on Diary of a CEO. But the actually I'll try to link to it on the description of the this podcast. But at any rate, what he talks about is you have a list of things that you need to do, and you take the top 3 priorities that you need to accomplish today. And those are the only things. So that's your signal. Those are the only things you worry about accomplishing. You have to accomplish anything today. Those 3 things, that's it. Everything else, noise. And so you just put all that other stuff out of your way. The very next day, if you still need to do those other things, then you come up with this list again. You take the top 3 things, and those are the only things you concentrate on for the rest of your day. Do not bounce around. There's actually a lot of it was actually a big study that was done, and I can't quote it exactly, but it was a big study done on multitasking and the effects of multitasking. And so the science basically proves that if you concentrate on one thing and one thing alone from beginning to end, you have a much higher success rate of getting things done, not only getting them done correctly and actually getting them done, but getting more things done than if you were to try to do, say, 2 or 3 things at the same time, dividing your focus. So you start something, but you can't finish it. So you go move on to another thing. Then you go back to the first thing before you're finished with the second thing. And then a third thing comes up. And you're all over the place. And you keep going back and forth. But you eventually finish all 3. The guy who started one thing is already on the 5th or 6th thing by the time you finish 3. And science proves that this is the case. So that is, time blocks. What time blocks are, and how this relates, is time blocks. Basically, you take a block of time each day, and in that block of time, you put 100% of your focus. That is to say, everything else. goes out the window. Turn your phone on do not disturb. Make sure that you don't look at any of your emails. You don't answer any phones. You don't talk to anybody. During this block of time, you are 100% dedicated to the one task that you've allotted for that time frame during that day. And so time blocks allow you to kind of organize your whole day around that. So if you wanted to, say, for instance, spend some time working on your emails, you would have a block of time in which you would read your emails. And only during that time are you going to read your emails. And only during that time, and of course, during that time, all you're going to do is answer your emails. Now, if you finish before that block of time is done, and there's some other random thing that, maybe you wanted to do a little research on something, some crazy idea entered your head earlier in the day, you can do that during that block of time. But once that block of time is done, it's done. All right, so you got to put that down. You can go back to that again tomorrow if it's worth dedicating a block of time to. Now, if you keep your focus to this, keeping in mind the signal to noise ratio, if you keep your signal, that is to say, if you stick to your signal, you put everything else out, right? And you set up your blocks of time based on that idea. That is to say, that you have 3 hours every day in which you don't have to dedicate it to something stupid. Like, I don't know, second shift job. but if you can then put all of your energy into that, right? That is it. That is your focus time. That is I think you can find a way, and now I'm saying this as somebody that doesn't really dedicate time into this, but you can find a way to combine the two principles, the signal to noise ratio and the time blocks, and you can combine those two things into one very healthy habit every day. And you do that every day, you're going to find that your progress towards your goals is going to increase tenfold. It's all backed by science. I've seen a lot of information on it, and it's very it's very promising. So, with all that said, those are the good habits, and I hope that that maybe I've inspired you guys to first of all work on getting rid of those things that are holding you back. If you have a habit of doing something and it doesn't provide any benefit to you whatsoever, or anyone around you for that matter, then you need to let it go, and you need to find a way to get rid of that habit. And by doing so, you can replace that bad habit with a good habit, which could be any number of the things that I've already discussed. Now, you should, what I would really like, I want to take a minute here to talk a little bit about this podcast and what I would like to see happen from here on. I believe I teased on it a little bit on my on last week's episode that, we're hoping to build a community around this podcast. I'm still working on trying to figure out how that's going to happen. It isn't really a giant priority of mine right now, but I do plan on making it happen. I think it's going to become a very high priority soon. So with that said, for the time being, I'd like to ask from all of you is very simply, I'd like to see some interaction from you. Now, I can't do live podcasts. I'm just not set up for it right now. And I certainly wouldn't know how to take in calls on this podcast at this present moment, maybe someday. But even so, what I do have though is wherever you're watching this podcast, there's a comment section. Almost guarantee it. I've also got a Facebook page. You can also if Twitter, X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, if that's your jam, we've got you can always mention us in there. Um, I'd love to start interacting with you. If you're watching this podcast, please let me know. Please tell me what you agree with on these on each episode, or what you disagree with, what you'd like to see me do differently. I'd love for you to do all that stuff. Actually, I don't care if you just want to tell me how much you hate it. If you don't like the podcast, let me know. I don't care. You're not going to get me to stop. First of all, I'm just going to keep doing it. But what you can do is you can give me information that will help me to get better. And that would definitely be welcome. Even if you can't frame things in a way that seems like constructive criticism, that's okay. I'll try my best to find a way to find something in there that actually proves to be beneficial towards me or towards the podcast. But if you have suggestions, please make your suggestions. I will say that one of the things that I'm self-conscious about with the podcast is I don't think that I'm a particularly great public speaker. So if you're going to criticize me about that, before you do, just know, I mean, it's fine. If you got tips on becoming a better public speaker, I'm more than happy to listen to them. I am working on it. It is something that I hope to get better and better and better at. So hopefully you won't have much to really criticize in that front. But, if you don't like the intro, let me know. I don't know. Any of those things, please let me know. But I do have what's known in the business, in the biz, I do have a call to action. Well, yeah. I mean, so I was going to, I'm in my notes here. I'm supposed to give you a recap as well, but I think I already covered the recap, so I'm gonna avoid that. Here's what the call to action is. So wherever you're watching this podcast, and if you're shy, just email me or send me a direct message or freaking whatever. Text me if you have my number. I don't care, but I want to hear from you. And what the call to action here is and what I would like to hear is I'd like you to, what's one small non-negotiable habit that you're going to start building this week to create a little more consistency in your life? And let me add to that. What's one you're going to start now, but what's one that you already have? What are you doing consistently every day that improves your life? If you're struggling to figure that out, then answer the next one. What's one thing that you're going to start doing tomorrow? One thing. Come up with one thing. Start doing it tomorrow. And this is what you need to remember when you're stacking these habits, okay? It's not about being there every day, but it is about consistency. You can miss a day because you forgot. You can't miss 2 or 3 or 4 days. If it's a daily habit, you need to do it every day. Missing one day is not going to kill you. Missing 2 or 3, that's you now making excuses for not doing it. Consistency. And the second thing I want to point out is that if you do it every day, if you do make a new habit, and it's consistent, you are now beginning your journey towards the person you want to be. If you build every day, if you show up every day, it doesn't matter how much progress you make. Progress doesn't always look the same. But if you consistently work at this new habit or some other habit or adding to your habits, whatever it is, if you have habits that are good habits and you do them every day, you show up every day, remind yourself every morning when you're saying, I don't want to do that. But if I do, it doesn't matter how much I get done. It doesn't matter how much progress I make. But if I just show up and try, then I'll have made progress. Because progress doesn't always look the same. But consistently making progress every day, over time, brings you to your goal. And so that's really where we're at. I just want to say, once again, we're at the point in podcast where I need to say, I thank everybody who's been paying attention, who's been watching. I actually had a couple of interesting conversations this week where I was surprised to hear that some people were tuning in and listening to the podcast, and I can't thank you guys enough. It would mean the world to me if you would make this, share this with other people. I promise you, they're only going to get better, because it is my mission to make this better every week. And like I said earlier, drop a message. I don't care what your criticism is. Criticize me all you want. Tips, tricks, criticism, whatever it is, comment. Start letting me know and showing me for real that you're listening in and that you're interested. And I will thank you ahead of time. I'm thanking you so much now for doing that. And I'm thanking you so much now for having paid attention, even if you only watched one podcast before this one, or this is the one that you first start with. I can't thank you enough for watching. And I think that I've said thank you enough times that you're probably ready to tune out. Next week, we're going to talk about the essentials for the entrepreneurial hub. So next week, this may change. And if it does, I apologize. But next week, I'd love to. We're going to talk a little bit about different tools that we use to manage business, to drive us forward in creating our ideas and making our ideas into reality. And things that I'm considering that I've already started using and that I'll consider adding to my arsenal as time goes on. But certainly, nobody gets into this business without help from something or someone. So we'll talk a little bit about that next week. And once again, I thank you for joining me on this podcast, and I hope you have a wonderful week. And I'll see you again next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.